Anyway, let's get our friends of the show in here now. We got Andre, Laura, and Scott all returning to the Vanguard, all repeat guests on the program. Some of our best friends of the show. We're so in awe of the hard work you guys do on the ground. Please each introduce yourselves briefly before we get into some questions and topics of discussion today. We can start with you, Andre. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. My name is Andre. I am the campaign director of Whole Washington, the statewide ballot initiative for single-payer healthcare, as well as a co-founder of Medicare for All Everywhere, which is the ambition to create a 50-state coalition of that campaign strategy. All about Medicare for all about universal healthcare all the time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andre. Welcome back to the show. Always love chatting with you. And how are you doing, Scott? Good to see you again.
Great. Thanks for having me on. My name's Scott Denoyer. Founded the New York chapter of the Red Berets. Medicare for All activist, New York Health Act, Whole Washington, solidarity across through all the states to reach universal health care.
Absolutely. Welcome back to the show, Scott. Thank you so much for your time. Really looking forward to hearing from you today. And hello, Laura. Welcome back to the Vanguard. How you doing?
Hello. Hello. Thanks for having me back. I'm Laura Fielding, and I'm the founder of the Creative Grassroots Coalition Red Berets for Medicare for All, and board member of Whole Washington for Universal Healthcare. And really quickly, I'll answer that question or musings that you were expressing, Zach, about, first of all, I have a couple more hats I would like to send to you both. So if you let me know, because although they do fit most people, there are like times where there's just like, let me try a slightly different fit and see. And also, Zach, in that package, when I get around to mailing it off, there's also like a beanie in case ultimately at the end of the day, you just decide, you know what, I'm more of a beanie guy, but it has a little label that said Red Berets Medicare for All on it. So,
oh yeah, and just for the record, I love my red beret. The joke I was making was like, I feel like I've got this like fine suit, but I'm wearing the jacket backwards. Like I just never know, like if I'm like making a fool of myself. Like no, I appreciate you guys so much.
The beautiful thing about it is that people, there's just so many different ways that you can wear them. So no, there's not a wrong way in my opinion. But yeah, thanks for having me back on the show and us.
Of course. You're always welcome on the Vanguard. And yeah, I will say, as it gets colder, especially, I really do appreciate having this beautiful beret. It does keep my ears warm out in the chilly weather. So I never have hats for some reason. So I do genuinely appreciate having the red beret. Not only does it look awesome, but it has real practical use as well. And of course, the meaning, if you want to share what the meaning of the red berets are, if anyone's not familiar, I know that you guys have probably explained before on our platform, but just in case anyone's tuned in and be like, what the hell is going on with these red hats and their significance? If one of you would like to talk a little bit about that idea and what the purpose behind the Red Beret Army is.
I'd love it if Scott would share kind of an approximation of something that he says in the upcoming healthcare justice documentary, Healing Us. He describes why we wear these red berets so well.
Yeah, the documentary she's talking about is Healing Us. And in that, the quote that I make is, the Red Berets are an icon of a warrior. And by us all wearing the red berets, the red also shows the imagery projection of our healthcare system. Mine is purple and teal, as many of us know, is for suicide prevention. But the red berets are, for healthcare in general. And by showing us all wearing them together, it projects our solidarity, state by state, through the states, all together, showing that none of us fight alone. So it's a icon of a warrior, the images of solidarity, and the image of the healthcare system, all combined in one beautiful hat.
Yeah, thank you so much, Scott. The color was originally chosen to lift up the voices of nurses. National Nurses United is the largest nurses labor union to advocate for national improved Medicare for all. And of course, shout out to Cal nurses who are always working towards passing CalCare. So the idea was just knitting for nurses and the 99% crochet for care. And definitely the idea that we are in this to achieve healthcare for every single person in this country. That is without a doubt. And the way that we do that is to create an interconnected fabric of solidarity. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always so lovely to hear you guys talk about it, because there's such an intense, real solidarity through the movement that you guys have built here. And I wonder, and I'm not sure who the best one of you guys, probably all a round table, but if you guys could just give everybody a little bit of an update on what you guys have been up to. Obviously, Gavin and I know you guys are doing so much hard work behind the scenes, but sometimes it's easy for our audience to, just pause, and they haven't heard you guys in a little bit. So could you maybe talk a little bit about the day-to-day of what you guys have been up to, and the gears that are turning over at Red Berets?
Well, I think for an overall campaign view of whole Washington, we could turn it over to Andre, but I will say it's been a pleasure over the last couple of weeks to bring Scott back out to Washington State. He visited in end of July for a couple events for the March for Healthcare Justice that M4A Everywhere, Andre's organization, organized, and also to be out here for the showing of the private screening of Healing Us. And in that time, in July that he was here, he gathered, how many was it, Scott? 600 and how many signatures?
632.
Yeah, to which this last week, despite the cold and just all of the factors, he was able to add signatures to that count, and quite a few pages of data entry that I still have to enter to the whole Washington count. But maybe Scott could speak to a meeting that he got to come along on. We had a legislative meeting that a local RN who is a whole Washington volunteer and signature captain set up with Speaker of the House, Washington Speaker of the House, Representative Lori Jenkins, and Scott was able to come with us to meet with her. You want to say anything about that, Scott?
Oh yeah, that was worth the whole trip and any ups and lows that we've gone through the whole time, because many of you might realize that my promise to Danny at his casket was to make our lawmakers look me in the eye and see the consequences of their decision. And as Lori had mentioned, we had spoken to Lori Jenkins, which is the Washington Speaker of the House. And I've also had the opportunity, I believe, to speak with the New York Speaker of the House, Carl Heastie, and Senate Majority Leader Andrea Cousins here in New York. So I was able to take my experience from those two conversations that I had with the New York lawmakers to Speaker Jenkins and explain to her how, what happened to Danny. And I explained this to those two politicians and how we had the votes to pass the New York Health Act and they still didn't call it, and expressed to her how we as the people see what our politicians are doing and it's not right. And I mean, I was also expressed to Speaker Jenkins about how Vice President Kamala Harris shared Danny's story and then 3 weeks later introduced a plan that would have rewarded his murderers, and that we see these actions. We aren't okay with vote blue no matter who, that I'm going to always vote my morals. And if they don't represent me, then why should I represent them? So it was very powerful for me to be able to once again continue to fulfill my promise to Danny, as well as make sure our politicians understand what we see, that when what they do, and she was very receptive, I might add. Of course, we didn't expect her to sign on to whole Washington within the half-hour pitch. But she had suggestions as how we could better approach politicians to get them to sign on. That's supportive, and I will take that as a win, because she's told us she believes healthcare is a human right, and she supported our activism. Even she took the bill and she's going to read through it. Hopefully we'll have some positive feedback from there. I don't know, Laura, do you have anything else to say about that experience?
Spoken directly with Representative Kilmer and let's see, formerly Representative Denny Heck and numerous other elected officials. I did feel that we were being listened to, like truly listened to by Representative Jenkins, as opposed to we activists begin to see really quite clearly when we're just receiving a line of talking points, and it didn't feel like talking points. She did a lot of listening and making some notes, and certainly took a petition, which again, when we unfold the whole thing, is the entire language of the petition, and therefore, and also the bills that we'll be reintroducing, but Andre will get into that. So yeah, overall, when we look at the support that like the New York Health Act has, that has been written and around for 40 years, as compared with Whole Washington that is relatively new, we have some work to do on the legislative leg of our strategy. But so the list of endorsers or co-sponsors as of right at this moment is less than. It's what we're working on. And it was a really powerful thing to be able to go straight to Representative Speaker of the House Jenkins, who is my rep, to say, we have collected, or 4,007 of your constituents have signed I-1471. So that's like a specific number, and it's a pretty powerful number, actually. And to me, it's sort of like us letting her know this is what's possible as what's been possible now, and as we grow our coalition and grow our volunteer base. Just imagine how many more signatures that we can collect. So hopefully we have your full attention with that.
Absolutely. That's so impressive. And also I wanted to shout out Adi. Thank you so much, Adi the bug catcher, once again for the $10. I qualitatively know Medicare for All is economically feasible, but I could use resources with actual numbers to point to moderates and right wingers who challenge Medicare for All. Any recommendations? P.S. I'll definitely buy at least 2 berets. And I did put the link in the description as well as the chat if you guys want to support the red berets and buy yourself one of these beautiful berets to support the work they're doing. So that's really sweet of you, Adi. And does anyone on the panel have any recommendations as far as resources with actual numbers to point to the economic feasibility of Medicare for All? Is that something anyone wants to add a contribution to?
I did go ahead and throw the CalCare National Nurses United info in there for him, just as a quick one, just to let everybody know we did throw that in the chat.
So I think probably the best resource that gets kind of widely recommended is called Medicare for All, A Citizen's Guide. And I can't remember the author right now, but he is a well-known national figure on Medicare for All, kind of in the done a lot of I think advice on the Senate and House bills. I'm really going to hate myself if I can't remember the name. I'll probably look it up in a minute. But that's like a book. The numbers that I often bring to the conversation that I think really ground the conversation is that between 45,000 and 60,000 preventable deaths happen every year in our country, due primarily to lack of access to healthcare that those people can afford. And so when you just sort of start with, people die, I think that can be very persuasive. And then the other one is just medical bankruptcy, which I think most people intuitively kind of grasp that you shouldn't go bankrupt just because you need medical care. And the number that I think, and these are kind of, it depends on exactly which study you look at. There's some variation, but I try to be fairly conservative with these numbers. And in the United States, there's about 500,000 bankruptcies where the primary cause that's listed is medical expenses. And so when you basically take these two numbers that have that kind of highest impact, like going bankrupt or dying, and then you say, in Canada, those numbers are zero, right? In most other countries that you would compare to the United States in terms of development and wealth, the number would be zero. It really, 45,000 to 60,000, that's like the number of people who die in traffic fatalities every year, right? And when you imagine that we could actually eliminate that, I think that thinking big is actually often easier than thinking small. So having these really big sort of summary statistics to ground the conversation, there's a million smaller statistics about, how much money gets saved where, how much better it could be distributed and stuff, but I think they're a little harder to grasp. And so that's why I recommend the very many books and studies that are out there if you're really ready to become a student of this.
Awesome.
But
Yeah, and it does look like the Medicare for All Citizens guide is available for like $3 on eBay if anyone's interested in checking that out. It does appear to be pretty cheap. Also, of course, you can always bring up the fact that America's the wealthiest country in the world, yet Norway, Japan, the United Kingdom, Kuwait, Sweden, Bahrain, Canada, the UAE, Denmark, Finland, etc., all have single-payer healthcare, and we don't. So there's really no excuse for us to not be keeping up with the rest of the developed world. Again, given that we're the so-called greatest country in the world and definitely the richest country in the world, there's really just no excuse. And I think that's a pretty salient argument, even for people on the right wing and moderates and stuff like that, because they can understand that concept that we can at least keep up with, if not exceed, the quality of healthcare in other countries that are in the developed world.
Yeah, and just to piggyback onto that, if the other common pushback that you get from individuals when they're like, "Oh, well, that will work in other countries, but that won't work in the United States. There's just too many of us. That's why Denmark and Sweden, they have smaller population sizes that they're working with." But there was just a bunch of headlines about a week or two ago about how Germany in 2023 is poised to overtake the GDP of Germany and become the fourth wealthiest economy in the entire world. Germany, much smaller country, typically one of those countries right wingers point to. It's like, oh, it works over there because they're small. We just roll out the red carpet for a pro CalCare argument there as well. And shout out to you, Adi, for picking up that book. I'm sure it'll be a great read.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Andre, if you would like to chat a little bit about some of the updates over at Whole Washington, let us know what you're up to. Let us know what kind of progress is being made, and how people can help if they want to.
Yeah, and I'll just squeeze in the other kind of summary statistic that's always good to remember is that we pay approximately twice per capita in the United States for our healthcare while failing to achieve the universal coverage. So that's a good one to bring in. But yeah, with Whole Washington, we are nearing the end of the initiative campaign. So we have till the rest of the year to gather signatures. And we're currently at just shy of 80,000. Which would put us at 20% of the way there. So with the time that we have left and the amount of signatures we have, a lot of people, wonder if we're going to make it and kind of where that puts the campaign and stuff. And I guess what I would say is that, we can't always anticipate the future, and there's always growth that happens across the campaign. But we are always sharing the actual signatures that we have and the amount of time, because we really believe in building this campaign on top of transparency. This is a volunteer effort, which means that people need to be informed, to make decisions about how they're going to volunteer their time and stuff. So we want to be really straight with people about, how many signatures we have and how much time we have left, and kind of acknowledge that reaching the ballot, the signatures we need to make the ballot this year looks like a huge challenge. But we are still encouraging people to go out there and gather signatures because of some of the things that Laura has talked about. So being able to go into a representative's office and lobby them to support the legislation, and being able to say, well, we have thousands of signatures in your district. And to put that into context, many races at the state level are won by just 1,000 to 2,000 votes. So if you're able to come in with that many votes from people that you've gathered a signature for, affirming their support for healthcare, it shows that it's like an election critical issue. And so, we're trying to get the most as we can out of the rest of this year. And so the call is to keep gathering signatures, to keep trying to recruit people into the campaign. and there's a few different ways to think about that. One is that the first signature is by far the hardest one you're ever going to collect, or maybe the second one, right? So the first one can be yours. But the getting, that board into your hand, getting that volunteer trained up out to a signature gathering event, that can take a lot of work, right? But the next one comes quite a bit easily, right? Quite a bit more easily. You make that first ask, somebody says, sure, I'll sign that. And then the next one and the next one gets easier and easier. So when it comes to our recruitment and training efforts, being able to actually go out and gather signatures is like the best training and development that we can offer. And then on top of that, it really helps us build that like recognition out in public. We are preparing to introduce into next year's legislative session. We have introduced it in the House a number of times. And it looks like our number of co-sponsors in the House is likely to grow because several of our supporters from the House actually won their races for the Senate. So I wrote a blog post about this, but none of our incumbents lost office. A couple of them retired. But a number of candidates who were running for office also had endorsed us and got elected. So in the House, we've about kept even. Maybe a couple of new co-sponsors. In the Senate, it looks like we're going to grow slightly. And once we secure sponsors, we haven't actually introduced in the House before. So just getting it introduced is a huge step forward for us. And in the Senate, we've never received a hearing. So that's kind of like our major Senate goal. But we're going to be securing our sponsors and then asking all of our people to set up meetings with their constituents, to ask them to come on and co-sponsor, to see how far we can get it this year. But the thing about the whole Washington strategy is that we're always showing that we're growing this movement out in public, right? So instead of going to these legislators and asking, can you please sign this legislation? Can you please do this for us? What we're always saying is, we want you to do this because it's the fastest way to do it. And you have the authority to save all of these lives and save all of our money and all of our time. But we're always planning to get back out there and put it on the ballot until this work is done. And so I can't guarantee, because I think we're still kind of finishing this campaign and making our decisions for the future. But we are going to be out there getting this on the ballot until this work is done. And hopefully all of that will be sooner rather than later. We're taking the fastest path that we can. And I just want to zoom out for a sec to Medicare for All everywhere and the national level, because healthcare did incredibly well on the ballot. And I think that it's under discussed even among Medicare for All activists. But, if you look at national Medicare for All, it's not clear to me that we've gained or lost significant ground. I think John Fetterman is likely to be a new co-sponsor in the Senate. In the House, I don't think we lost anyone, maybe gained a couple. The Democrats lost a few seats, so I could see it kind of going either direction, but only slightly. But long story short, I don't think the story on that is going to be that different in the next session. We'll see. We hope so. But where did we see some success? Well, Measure 111 was a constitutional amendment to make healthcare a right in Oregon. There are some criticisms of it along the lines of, well, it's a right to access affordable healthcare. And to me, that's language. What 100% matters is what comes of it, the implementation. So we'll see. I hope that they achieve kind of the ideals that are set down in this new constitutional right. But that won a very narrow victory. In Massachusetts, non-binding Medicare for All resolution was put on the ballot in 20 different districts and passed in all 20 of them. And then my personal favorite, and it's interesting because Medicaid can take a fair amount of beating out there. A lot of people don't seem to respect it quite as much as Medicare, but Medicaid itself is a juggernaut. It actually insures more people than Medicare itself. And South Dakota is the latest state to join the slate of Medicaid expansion states, and very relevantly did it on the ballot. And so even though it's a red state, even though their governor has blocked it, again, their people knew that they needed the health care. They knew they could put it on the ballot, and they passed it without that support from their leadership. So this stuff can do really, really well when given to voters. And I think that we are just trying to make that case as loudly, as often, and across as much of the country as possible, to show that, whether you're a candidate who's wondering if you can take on this issue, It's good for your career to support universal health care. And whether you're talking about putting it on the ballot directly, whether you're talking about advancing the bill, this is popular among voters. And we're trying to really build that awareness and build that movement made of ordinary people who are willing to make it kind of the main issue that they're working on.
Yeah, what you said about South Dakota is really inspiring because, one of the things Gavin and I talk about all the time on our show is the fact that, because of the fact that our elected officials are almost unanimously bought off by major corporations, by big healthcare, by big pharma, the lobbyists line their pockets and, keep them from voting in the best interest of the people that, perhaps our best avenue is through ballot initiatives, especially in a state like South Dakota where it's, just an ironclad Republican control. But on the flip side of that, we know that it is a popular issue amongst voters, even if they're going to turn around and vote for Republican politicians on an issue by issue case. And in a city or in a place where the population is smaller, you have a popular issue. It's going to be harder for the establishment to turn out regular registered voters in opposition to it if they're just are less people there. So yeah, I am. That's incredibly exciting and a little more surprising than the win in Oregon, which maybe people could have seen coming. But yeah, thank you for sharing that, Andre.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to talk a little bit about electoralism in general. I wanted to ask you guys what you're thinking about the movement for Medicare for All broadly nationwide as it relates to electoralism, because obviously in the post Bernie Sanders era, it's not a secret that the momentum behind the nationwide calls for Medicare for All, universal healthcare, single payer system have kind of died out, unfortunately, because people don't really feel like there's the viability in the same way that there was when we had a popular presidential candidate campaigning for this policy and popularizing this policy and putting it at the forefront of the discussion. So, you guys are actual activists, and I was just wondering what you think about that. Are you hoping that there's another presidential candidate, for example, someone like Bernie Sanders, that can kind of refocus the left's attention on this issue? Or do you think that that's a bit of a fool's errand that won't amount to anything, and that the time and effort that would be put into such a exercise would ultimately be useless because we all saw what happened to Bernie, and perhaps there's better avenues, more productive avenues for people's activism? What do you guys think about that? I'm really interested to hear your thoughts.
Well, my thought is basically that the day Medicare for All becomes a law in this country, it will be the day that the movement is so powerful, right, that the people who co-sponsor it and the president who signs it can't imagine not doing it. It feels like they have to, right? And I think what people are observing today is more that that's not where we are, right? It's not so much a commentary on what the path is. It's more progress report, and clearly that's not the case. And I think that one of the things that we need to maybe approach differently is I do think we need to encourage people to take this on as a major electoral issue. I've been in a number of meetings of Democratic Party organizations, progressive organizations, and I'm there to talk about whole Washington. And before I go on, they kind of do like a quick order of business. Senator Murray is up for re-election, and do we pass a resolution to endorse her? And they kind of run through, she's got these number of signature issues, right? These are sort of her main things. And then they'll even sometimes call out, notably, she is not a co-sponsor of Medicare for All, but X, Y, and Z, right? And then the LD will just vote to endorse her, right? And I think that if we want to see Medicare for All gain the kind of political power it needs to win, it needs that person to raise their hand and say, I don't think that we can endorse Patty Murray if she doesn't endorse Medicare for All, right? And it requires people to say, it's not just, this is an issue that I support, right? It's an issue that I'm actually willing to exercise my political power over, whether that's as a voter, because that's how that attitude is going to trickle up to the legislator, right? If you, the voter, aren't going to have that hard line, then why should the legislator have that hard line on Medicare for All while they're in office, right? And so I think that it's really a matter of we need to train ourselves, but also our legislators. It's like, get the endorsement. That's great, right? But then call them up the next week and say, as an endorser of Medicare for All, don't you think you would love to do this event promoting it, right? Or whatever it is, you have to escalate to the next step. You have to use a carrot and a stick, right? So a lot of the times the way that these things aren't supported is you send a, hey, would you like to endorse Whole Washington? And you just don't hear anything back, right? And that's in some cases, it's just because they're buried under communication. In other cases, it's because they don't want to. But, even a no can be a powerful thing, right? It's get the no on record. Say, thank you. I hear that you are not supporting this. Would you like to say why, right? And generally speaking, and this is the power of this issue, right? Advocating against universal health care sounds really bad. Doesn't sound bad when you do it, which is why they don't want to vote on it. They don't want to vote it down. They don't want to speak against it. They'd rather it just be not discussed. And so to me, instead of just like shutting down when you get that no, the way is to escalate. Say that into this mic. Say it publicly on this stream. I just want to make sure everyone's really clear where you are on this issue, and make them feel that heat of, I'm not going to get away with kind of just mumbling past this, right? What I say is going to come back, right? It's going to be on the social networks. If we can get it into the media, it's going to be in the media. The little clip is going to come back and be played every time I try to get elected. And I just don't want to deal with that. So make it easier to give the yes than the no, right? Make them feel like I'm saving my own skin by supporting this. I have to. My constituents demand it of me.
Absolutely. And do either Laura or Scott have anything to add to that, and any closing thoughts in general that you would like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, I think Laura, actually all three of us, I think, believe that our path forward, I think Laura coined the term fight on all fronts on this. That's where we're all at. I mean, many of you know, like we were saying earlier in the show, I was out in Tacoma collecting signatures for Whole Washington, but yet I'm over here in New York working on the New York Health Act as well. I'm pretty sure a lot of the Red Berets are coming from Washington this next coming Easter. I'm sure you guys might remember on the Vanguard where I had the action last year on April 9th in front of Fidelis Care. Well, this year, April 9th happens to fall on Easter, and we're bringing it back to Fidelis Care in New York City this time. So anybody wants to have Easter in New York City and join a protest, we're going to be there. Again, demanding for the resignation of Father Patrick Frawley, which is now the VP of Centene. But yeah, that's where we're at. We're starting on a state level issue, not one state at a time, but through the states. We build the momentum and we get the grassroots activists going, and we build a swell, and we push that, like Andre was saying, we have to make it so uncomfortable for our legislators that they're forced to do this. They have no choice. So that's where we're at. And also look forward to announcements about the documentary Healing Us that we're all involved in. It's up for consideration for the Sunset Film Festival. I believe I said that right.
Sundance?
Not a big movie guy. Yes.
The Sundance Film Festival?
Yes, it's being considered. We're hoping to hear an announcement of their awards. If it is, you can be sure we're going to make a lot of noise about that.
Hell yeah.
Got new coffee cups out too. You look for those apples.
People find. Are there? Is there somewhere? Are those on the Red Beret website or?
Well, these here I've been using to fund a new side business I'm doing for healthcare. I've got a bunch of vinyl and sublimation. That's what everything's going on behind me. So we can do signage, and we could do T-shirts, hats, mugs. And the whole concept is I'm going to offer my services for free, as long as, for signs and things like that for healthcare, as long as they just pay for the materials. But on the side, I'm also just selling coffee cups and things of that nature. Just if anybody wants a mug, just DM me on my Twitter account, and The coffee cups we're selling for $12 a piece plus shipping, but they're like 11 or $12 to ship it across the country. So it ends up being $25 from a $12 mugs. But
well, I just put the link to Scott's Twitter in the chat, so everyone hit that up and make sure to follow all of our activist friends on Twitter. They post great updates and info about the work they're doing. Emogi wanted to say thank you, Scott, which obviously we echo. You're doing such great work out there, so really appreciate your contributions to this movement, and thanks for your time today, of course. Is that your closing words, Scott, for today?
Just as always, we're always asking everybody to get involved. Just saying you support us is not enough. We need just standing out there holding a sign is an action. You don't have to get into a megaphone. You don't have to organize your own events. Just join us. We need people out there. We need our politicians to see all the bodies out there and just cheering us from the sidelines. Sadly, I wish it was enough, but it isn't. We need everybody, all hands on deck, all the time, because sure as hell the insurance companies have got that going on.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you once again, Scott. We really appreciate your work and for joining us today to share what you've been up to. Also, shout out to you, Adi, once again for the $10, letting you guys know that if any of you need software or automation tools built, to hit up Adi. He'd be happy to volunteer for the work you guys do. So that's really sweet of you, Adi. And yeah, if any of you guys want to get Adi's contact information from me, you can hit me up and I can forward that to you. I'm assuming that's the best way that Adi would like us to get you guys in touch if that would be something you'd be interested in. But either way, thank you for the contribution, Adi. That's really kind of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to you, Adi, and shout out to you, Scott. Really appreciate you sharing that today. And we hope you're staying warm up there in New York. I'm not sure what region of New York you're in, but I happen to know that it's been a goddamn blizzard up there. So I hope you and your family are staying nice and warm.
Absolutely. And Laura, do you have any final words or anything you wanted to share with our audience before we get you guys out of here?
Yeah, I think I would just echo really what Scott has just said, is that, we need people, actions, big and small. That is one of the things about wearing the platform in some way or another. The visibility is really, really important. So appreciate people that commented that they were going to purchase Red Berets. It helps Whole Washington fundraise, because we're always trying to get out and grow the campaign. In answer to what you were asking about electoralism, I guess there's still, I think, a lot of people who see this as a sort of one or the other thing, and I just see it much more interconnected than that. I know one thing that has happened for sure for me over the last couple of years after gathering thousands of signatures is that my standards electorally, if anyone were to run both, for president and at any level, my standards for politicians become more and more exacting every single cycle that we get through. And at this point, at least in Washington state, and I think hopefully as other states begin to get out and look at the ballot process, it should be an interconnected effort. So if someone was going to run for local office here in Washington, for example, I would want to hear, my name is such and such. If elected, I will co-sponsor and organize and fight to pass National Improved Medicare for All, or the Whole Washington Health Trust, again, depending on what level, what seat they're running for. And in the meantime, I am out collecting signatures for Initiative 1471 to get universal health care to the ballot. So would you please sign the petition? And I would appreciate your vote. We have to get much, much smarter about how we do this. And if a politician at any level would like, my vote, then they will be out actually being an activist. We can no longer afford people to just pay lip service. I love the way that Andre talks about how when people sign the petition, that's moving from support level into you just did an action. And that's a great way of looking at it, So signing the petition, you're already doing an action. Wearing a Medicare for All button or a t-shirt and going into the store so that could potentially strike up a conversation, that is doing an action. But we do need people to do more than just support. So when we say, 70% people support this policy, if we had just a significant portion of that number out doing some level of action, we'd be in a completely different realm of possibility right now. So I highly encourage everyone who sees this to just consider how they could bring just a little more action into the support that you already have for this issue. Thank you very much.
Of course, always great to see you, Laura, and great to see you, Andre and Scott, as well. Do we have any final wrapping up thoughts? So great to see you guys. I know we covered a lot. Yeah, floor is everybody else's.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
A few in.
Sure, go ahead, Andre.
Yeah, so just a few things. If you're in the Washington or Seattle area, a few things that I want folks to know about. So at 2 p.m. on December 6th, we're actually going to try to get a resolution through the Seattle City Council. It's a non-binding resolution for single payer. And Seattle City Council was the first council to pass one of these. So that was maybe like 2017. So we wanted to update it to include the latest versions of the Medicare for All bills in the House and the Senate. But also we want to pass it as a hybrid resolution. So increasingly, we're asking these resolutions to be both, we support it at the state level and the federal level. And so that will be on December 6th, and you can email the city council members now, and you can sign up for public comment at noon on December 6th. So if you mark your calendar, and I don't know, I'll try to get the link out there. The other thing is that Washington State has a universal healthcare commission, which is tasked with creating a universal healthcare system over the next few years. And there's a lot of reasons why, we hope that it will be successful, but don't feel that it's, guaranteed success. But what we do know is that the more representation strong single payer activists have on that commission, the better the result is going to be. And they're actually expanding that commission to take a few new members. So if you can sign up to sit on that commission, that's a way that you can get involved in this. And then, so that's like the local stuff out here in Washington, but this is a national show, and that's why we have Medicare for All everywhere. So if you want to work on this in your state, the best way to do that is to sign up for MedicareForAllEverywhere.org. And we meet on Mondays. We have a Slack. But what we want to do is really create that campaign or amplify that campaign in every state, right? So maybe you've never worked on this before and you don't even know where to begin. Well, we can get you plugged in to the people doing work on the ground in your state. If there isn't a campaign in your state yet, we want to help you create it, right? So whether your state has initiatives or not, whether there's already a bill written or not, we have the resources necessary to develop the policy, develop the political strategy, and kind of set it into motion. And, getting that going in all 50 states and all of the U.S. territories is a really big project. And some states are much farther along than others. But our goal is really to create that across the entire country and then to make them, connected so that they can mutually help one another. So MedicareForAllEverywhere.org to do that. And then the very, very last one, I promise. So Whole Washington brings in about $1,600 to $1,700 a month in recurring contributions, monthly recurring contributions. You might notice that that's not a huge amount of money. It's not a huge amount of operating budget to run a statewide campaign on. If you look at the work we do and compare it to, say, getting one person elected to Congress, you're getting this work on the cheap. Congressional races are incredibly expensive. You're raising minimum hundreds of thousands of dollars to have any kind of shot. I currently am a volunteer with Whole Washington. I hope that over the next, campaign, next several months, that we might get a contract finalized for me. But if you really think about $1,700 a month, I could take 100% of Whole Washington's money and barely have enough to get through my rent that year. So if you can, go to wholewashington.org/donate. Those small Bernie Sanders monthly contributions, $10, $27, whatever you can do. But those recurring contributions are a way that anyone, no matter where you are, you could be way outside of the United States, you can contribute to this movement. And those small recurring contributions help us plan, they help us budget. And so it might not seem like that much money a month, but it actually makes a really huge difference. So wholewashington.org/donate if you want to help fund some of this movement.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. We've posted some links in the chat for some of the stuff you guys mentioned. We'll also be posting a standalone separate video of this conversation. So you guys can share that if you want afterwards, and hopefully get out the information to more people. But we really, really respect you guys and the work you do so much. You're great friends of the show. And just thank you so much for the work you're doing.
Absolutely. Great to see you guys. I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll looking forward to getting you back in the seat on the show.
Solidarity.
Thank you so much. Solidarity.
Thank you, comrades.